Right. Hey everyone, thanks again for joining us today. My name is Simran and I'm with Canopy. Canopy is a co-working space that's based in San Francisco. And I'll add our website in the chat box so you can take a look at us. We've teamed up again with the amazing Kim Caholt of For Good Ventures, and she's put together a wonderful panel where they're going to be discussing the future of waste, the next $1 trillion industry. You're welcome to put your questions in the Q&A. We'll get to them as the discussion progresses. And now I'm going to pass this on to Kim, and she can introduce everyone that's going to be with us today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in. We have an incredible panel today that I'm excited to introduce. I'm going to start with Matt Kameen. Matt is President and Chief Development Officer of KDC Sustainable Infrastructure and KDC Agribusiness. KDC's focus is utilizing infrastructure projects to make society more efficient and sustainable, and its core belief is that the environment and financial returns can work together to solve these problems. KDC's background is developing, owning, and operating close to $4 billion of infrastructure projects, including in power, telecom, solar, and in agriculture, since the 1980s. Matt, along with his family, are impact investors focused on new sustainable technologies that can then be scaled using the strengths of the team at KDC. Matt graduated with a BA in engineering and a minor in economics from Lafayette College and was the captain of the baseball team in 2007. Thank you for joining us, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
We also have Brahim Al-Husseini. Brahim is an award-winning serial entrepreneur turned tech investor. He made his fortune in fiber optics and rolled it into clean tech in the early 2000s after seeing the increasing plastics problem in our seas and oceans. He is the founder of Full Cycle, a growth equity fund accelerating the deployment of climate-critical technologies worldwide. He's also an early investor in Tesla, Uber, Beyond Meats, and Lyft, as well as Neobank Aspiration, Clean Choice Energy, and Cornerstone Capital Group. He is also a frequent contributor on CNBC, Bloomberg, and Yahoo Finance, and a passionate advocate for immigrants and sound environmental policies. Thank you, Brahim, for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
And last on today's panel, we have Komal. Komal Ahmed is founder of Copia. Copia is solving the world's dumbest problem by building technology to dramatically reduce food waste and end hunger. Copia is a for-profit surplus food waste management solution that solves the complex logistics associated with the redistribution of excess food from businesses. This year, Copia will feed over 4 million people with enough high-quality food to fill up 27 NFL stadiums. Copia is recognized as one of the top 3 startups run by women in the US and one of the top 8 startups graduating out of Y Combinator. Graduating from UC Berkeley with honors, Komal was the University of California's 30 Under 30 Global Food Changemaker and awarded the Social Entrepreneur of the Year. Komal is named by Fast Company as one of the most creative people in business, listed by InStyle among the top 50 most badass women in the world, and by Toyota as Toyota's mother of invention. Komal is on Forbes 30 Under 30 and has been relentlessly honored with the prestigious Nelson Mandela Humanitarian Award. Wow. Thank you for joining us, Komal.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, it's really an exciting panel, and we're going to be focusing on the redistribution of food waste as an input for the next trillion-dollar industry, as well as some of the other technologies that the 3 of you are looking into implementing. First, let's go ahead and start with Matt. Can you tell us about KDC Ag, KDC Sustainable Investments? I know that your family and yourself have been involved in a couple of different large businesses where you're capturing waste and using it as an input.
Yeah, so we kind of look at waste, and partly why I think this panel is pertinent is we look at waste as a potential for new businesses and repurposing that waste into new products. So we have kind of three core businesses. One is KDC Ag, that we're focused around supermarket food waste and repurposing that through a processing manufacturing facilities that we have, where we turn it into animal feed and pet feed. So kind of repurposing those nutrients, not allowing them to go to waste, and turning it, effectively food back into food. So that's kind of one focus. The second focus is looking at the cardboard waste infrastructure, and especially with e-commerce booming, as we all now sit at home even more and more. We have a group that's focused around building manufacturing facilities or recycling facilities to take cardboard boxes and repurpose them into finished pulp that then can be utilized to create more cardboard boxes out of it. So we're building a bunch of facilities around North America to do that. And then the third technology that we're looking at is a little bit earlier stage, but it's looking at capturing CO2 from power plants or kilns related to concrete production, and through a patented technology, we would ultimately create carbon negative concrete. That's a fairly early stage opportunity for us, but we're really excited about it, where, again, we could create, a significant dent within the climate change issue, and also repurpose, recycled concrete or any type of calcium source, and also sequester CO2 out of the atmosphere. So those are kind of our three platforms, but it's all kind of comes back to, looking at infrastructure solutions to these macro problems.
Thank you. And each of these three different businesses that you're currently working on building, they each have an enormous impact with their relationship to waste and climate change. Can you talk a little bit as to the figures for each one, how big these industries are, or what the potential is for these businesses when they really get to the scale that you see them getting to?
Yeah, sure. So, I think from a food waste side, I think a lot of people kind of have heard the statistics. We throw out 40% of the food we grow. We've focused on supermarkets because we look at, if we're looking at solutions, we want to create something that can be scaled across the nation. Unfortunately, or maybe it's ironic, that any time of year, any place you are in America, you can walk into any supermarket and get any type of food. So the waste stream that comes out of those supermarkets is very consistent. And so that allows us to make a consistent animal feed or pet feed. Each of our facilities will process 60,000 tons a year of food waste, about somewhere between 150 and 200 tons a day. Our goal is to build 50 of those facilities across the US. And hopefully make a significant dent on the food waste side in coming out of supermarkets. We don't touch post-consumer. We don't touch those types of things. They're too difficult for our process to handle. So there needs to be a lot of solutions related to food waste. On the cardboard side, each facility will be it's a two-line manufacturing. It's about 800,000 tons annually of cardboard that will go through. We're looking to build 5 or 6 of those across North America in the next couple years. Again, the amount of boxes that we're all using is dwarfs that, and especially with China and other parts of Asia banning the importation of kind of our waste streams, it's really allowed solutions like ours to come to fruition. I think something like there's 30 million tons annually of cardboard waste in North America. And then on the concrete side, the amount of aggregate that's mined for concrete around the world dwarfs any type of mining imaginable. In fact, our hope with this solution is that we can scale it worldwide and have every part of the world use this technology to sequester carbon and effectively create carbon negative concrete permanently. So that's kind of the highlight.
That's staggering and fantastic. Thank you. Rahim, I know you have a lot of experience in looking at the different later stage technologies that are looking to up-purpose waste. Can you tell us a bit about Sonova and perhaps some of the others you're looking at?
You bet. So I got into the waste business primarily because I was a scuba diver. And I was a general technology investor, as you said, and switched to clean tech primarily because every year I go back to the Middle East and scuba dive in the same spot because we have a house on the water in the Red Sea. And I'd noticed the degradation of the quality of the marine life year after year. And the last time I went, which was kind of the aha moment for me, went from this lush landscape to, barren and full of plastic. And I even saw some used tires in there. And I remember exiting that dive thinking, what's the point of accumulating wealth if the things that we care the most about are going to fade away? And that's when I spent the rest of 2003 educating myself about the chemical balance on the planet, climate change, waste, etc. And that's when I ended up, focused on clean tech and then refining it in my growth equity fund, Full Cycle, which primarily focuses on atmospheric greenhouse gases that are not CO2, which is kind of counterintuitive. Most people think of climate change as a CO2 problem, and it is a CO2 problem, but we have to prioritize different molecules based on their heat trapping capacity. Most people don't realize that 24% of atmospheric greenhouse gases are called SLCPs, short-lived climate pollutants, things like methane and nitrous oxide and refrigerants. And they make up 24% of atmospheric greenhouse gases, but they're responsible for close to 50% of the warming. So, we created a growth equity fund that focuses on technologies that are market ready, as you said, you called them later stage. We even go all the way to market ready because if you're fighting climate change, you don't have time to wait till these kind of industrial scale type technologies end up getting commercialized. It's like the fire's in the backyard. You don't go invent firefighting technology. You grab a bucket and a hose and you get to work. And that's what we do. The reason why we're focused on waste is because a lot of waste, and the canines know this, and most of the people on this panel know this, waste a lot of times breaks down into methane. And methane is 86 times more heat trapping than CO2 in the first 20 years of the molecule's existence. And that's one of the things that we care about, what happens in the short term, because we're in a warming cycle, right? So then it becomes a matter of economics. Everything is made of the same stuff. Like we're all made of the same stuff if you break it down. So if we can find a way to take molecules, whether they're a banana peel or a plastic bottle or a piece of toilet paper, they're all breaks down into the same exact elements. So if there's a way to break things down into those elements and recombine them to create new stuff, that's the heart of the closed loop system, which is a verbiage that we throw around a lot. And that's what this technology company that you mentioned, Sonova, does. And it does it at economics that work as much for Kinshasa, Addis Ababa, Jakarta, Cairo, as it does for Berlin and San Francisco. Because we need systemic change. We don't want vanity projects. There's just no time for vanity projects. So what this company does is they basically break down hydrocarbons, whether they're industrial, commercial, municipal waste, into chemicals, not completely breaking down, so you don't have to go through the expense of having to resynthesize them into more complex molecules. They actually break them down just at the right spot so you can harvest the chemicals that you want, some for energy, some for plastic, some for biofuel. You can even turn some into food if you wanted, for certain kinds of feed, and is kind of the holy grail of how to create a closed loop, actual real recycling, not downcycling, not fake recycling where the containers are dirty and everybody pretends that there's still a little bit of peanut butter on it and we think it gets recycled where it actually goes into a landfill. All of that just breaks down into those molecules, and you can recreate them, give them another life in perpetuity. And that's what we want. We want that kind of perfect closed loop system for modern civilization to not turn into, what was that Disney Pixar movie called? The
Wally?
Wally, exactly. We don't want to turn into Wally. So this is finally, now the economics of that technology allows us to create this systemic change on a global level, because the technology works, the economics works, and what Full Cycle will do and why we created the fund is to accelerate the deployment of this and other types of technology. So anyway, I hope that wasn't too technical. Thank you for your question.
No, that was fantastic. Thank you. And it also shows that by breaking it up into its most fundamental elements, how many different industries it could be reused in, which I like and I appreciate. So can you tell us a little bit about what you said, that this is a later stage company and you're already looking at certain geographies to deploy it. Do you have any announcements that you can share with us as to where some of the first waste streams you're going to be upcycling are coming from?
So right now we have a plant in India, we have a plant in Europe, we have 2 plants in Europe, and the next thing that we want to do is we want plant in North America. So California obviously is a great state for that, Massachusetts, and that's where we're focused. We even have another plant that might be breaking down in Utah. It's not completely ready for any sort of announcement, but everything about it looks doable. So maybe by our next call, I'll have an official announcement about that one. And my understanding is that will probably be one of the biggest landfills in all of North America. And it'll be so fantastic to be able to use that many tons of waste daily and turn them into more raw material for industry, and just again have more states implement closed loop systems, so we don't have to worry about what we're shipping to China, what China wants or doesn't want, what country is willing to take our waste. What a ridiculous thing that we used to do in the first place: put our garbage on barges and burn bunker fuel to send it halfway across the world, hopefully for somebody to turn it into something and then ship it back to us. Hopefully that's going to be ending from the human story, because what is it, Komal, that you said? It's the dumbest thing. So this is probably the
world's dumbest problem.
Yeah, so this is probably the second dumbest problem after the one Komal is solving. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more, and that's a perfect segue to jump to Komal. One of the things I wanted to mention was Komal was part of the inspiration for me to start For Good Ventures, because she found she's pivoted from originally a nonprofit to a for-profit and found a way to scale exponentially by making it valuable to companies to give away their food waste and save them money at the same time. And I thought, wow, if this girl can create this magnitude of an effect, solving 2 problems, both food waste and hunger, and do so while making everyone else money and scaling quickly, it's entrepreneurs like you that are going to change the world. And so I'm excited to have you, and please share your story as well as a little bit about where Copia is now.
Sure, yeah, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Komal, and my journey began when I was a student at Berkeley, and I was walking down Telegraph Avenue when I encountered a homeless man who was begging for food. Most people beg for money, but he was begging for food. And so that really compelled me to stop and invite him to join me for lunch. And during lunch, he sat across from me, just wolfing down his food. So he was unbelievably hungry. It wasn't, a ploy for anything else. And in between bites, he shared a story. He said, "My name is John. I just came back from my second tour in Iraq. I've been waiting weeks for my military benefits to kick in. And because they haven't, I haven't eaten in 3 days. And this really hit home for me. This is a veteran, someone who'd given the most selfless sacrifice for our country, only to come home to face yet another battle, that of hunger. And then adding insult to injury, right across the street from where John and I were, enjoying a meal, Berkeley's dining hall is throwing away thousands of pounds of perfectly edible food. And so it's this very stark reality of those who have and waste, and those who are in need and starve, And those two people literally right across the street from one another. And what I realized is that this is emblematic of a much larger problem, and that's that we waste over 365 million pounds of perfectly edible food every single day. And for everyone listening at home, just to wrap your head around that number, if you imagine the world's largest football stadium filled to its absolute brim, not with last night's pad thai or this morning's bean poisson, but untouched, unopened, perfectly edible food. And this costs us over $218 billion every year. And if food waste were a country, it would be the third largest emitter of methane after the US and China. So it's a massive economic cost, a huge environmental impact, not to mention in some of the wealthiest cities in the world, including in San Francisco, 1 in 4 don't know where their next meal is coming from. So clearly, not a lack of food that's the issue, rather an ineffective distribution of that food, meaning that hunger is not a scarcity problem, it's a logistics problem. Turns out food waste is also a logistics problem, and that's essentially the logistics problem that we've built, technology to solve. And so Copia is a sustainable food waste management company. Businesses are able to easily request pickups of their excess food through our app. They'll tell us, what type of food they have, how much food they have, and then they request pickup. This information then gets sent to our virtual marketplace, and it will determine based on the inputs, based on how much food, what type of food, when does it need to be picked up by, which nonprofit can accept it at that day, that time, that quantity of food. Dispatches a driver nearly anywhere in the country. And in on average, less than 26 minutes, the driver shows up, takes this food directly to that nonprofit. The nonprofit, signs an automated digitized tax deduction receipt that our system generates. And so essentially creates an audit-proof way for these businesses to tap into tens of thousands to potentially millions of dollars in tax savings with zero liability. And then we'll also send back photos and testimonials of the people that were fed. So you get to see the impact you made by spending just a few minutes of your time essentially going Copia. And so I guess stepping back, so we're essentially technology that connects businesses with excess food to those who are in need of it instantly. So thereby reducing hunger and food waste at scale. And as Kim mentioned, we're not a nonprofit, we're a for-profit company. So businesses, our customers, are the food donors themselves. So they're food businesses like Whole Foods or the Cheesecake Factory, and then businesses with food like San Francisco 49ers, Stanford Hospital, UCSF, Pinterest, Intel. And they're paying us an annual or monthly subscription fee, not only because we're going to do a good thing for the community, but because we're helping them do the right thing for their bottom line. And so our IRS compliant platform is unlocking, millions of dollars in tax savings for our customers in an automated, audit-proof fashion. And now we've expanded beyond just food redistribution to waste reduction. So we're using machine learning to provide businesses with predictive analytics and demand forecasting to reduce overpurchasing and overproduction. So we're essentially the world's first end-to-end solution to food donation, for food donation and food waste prevention. And as Kimberly mentioned, we are going to feed 4 million people with mostly incredible food that would have otherwise been wasted.
Thank you so much, Komal. Are you able to talk a little bit about the partnerships that you've had during COVID as well to engage in feeding those who are reliant on agencies they can no longer go to for their meals?
Yes. So what we were seeing during COVID is 17.1 million more Americans are going hungry, and there is a massive, there's a massive demand for food. So the scalability of our technology and frankly, our entire business model was put to the test with it. So as I said, 17.1 million more Americans are facing food insecurity. So access to food is dramatically curtailed when food sources, like sources for this excess food, are shut down. So which means we needed more food into the system. So we needed to be able to also service triple threat individuals, those who do not have access to food stamps, to Meals on Wheels, to EBT, who are at health risks in themselves, as well as others if they leave their homes, and who I hate to say this word, but who would otherwise starve if Copia wasn't able to provide them meals. And so the question was, how do we get freshly prepared meals directly to the doorsteps of those who are most vulnerable to COVID in a way that also saves jobs? And so this was the impetus behind creating essentially what is the first ever emergency response platform. It's essentially an infrastructure that is enabling us to get like reboot kitchens. So revive their kitchens so that they're restarting and they're creating these, prepared meals that are then being dispatched and delivered directly to the doorsteps. And so it is bringing efficiency into a system. I mean, we're essentially pandemic proofing our business through this model. And since we launched, we provided over 150,000 meals in 3 different geographies. And what's interesting is Copia's model is B2B, right? Normally pre-COVID. With this model, it's B2B to C to C to C. And so the thinking is like, how are you going to economically like even make this work, right? Point-to-point logistics is one thing, but multi-point drop-off is totally different. So how do you make this whole process efficient? And so, what we spent 4 years building, essentially in 4 days, we re-engineered to be able to serve this massive need. And what this actually enabled us to realize is that we can become the technical infrastructure. Right now, we're redistributing excess food. With COVID, we are intelligently distributing food at scale. In the future, we're going to use this technical infrastructure to essentially enable us to move medicine, medical supplies, books, clothing, technology, because it's not a lack of any of these resources, it's just an effective distribution of those resources. So the future of Copia is to become the most intelligent platform for the redistribution of surplus resources. For right now, we're laser focused on food. And so this technical infrastructure that we've built, this now platform API that we've created, will allow World Central Kitchen to tap into it, will allow FEMA to tap into it, will allow American Red Cross to tap into it. So it's essentially a disaster response platform that is enabling both last mile and last inch delivery logistics. Does that answer your question?
Incredible, yes, absolutely. What an incredible pivot you were able to do in such a short amount of time. And that's fantastic. One of the things that I think all of us here on the panel have in common is that we also really believe that not only are these the right things to do, but it's net beneficial to humanity and the environment, but it's also a really lucrative business opportunity because the magnitude of the industry. And I think any time that you combine doing right with economic profits and what I believe will be superior economic profits than previous technologies, it's enticing for more and more people to come into this field. And so I would like to touch on what you see would be the magnitude of the business opportunity for each of you. If you were to successfully get this to where you want it to be, you can choose a point in time in the future or assume that a certain global, certain geography has adapted it. What do you think can be the economic impact and the as well as the for good impact, if you will? Does anyone want to take a shot at that question?
I can start.
Please. So
since you're allowing us to dream, I will, come from that point. My intention with launching Full Cycle is strictly, just love of planet and all its creatures, right? So it's a very and that love, has to be translated. I made my money as a serial entrepreneur, like you mentioned. I'm an investor, so things are rooted in the pragmatism of that experience. So it has to be, at least a private sector initiative that comes with certain economics that allows it to scale. Because nothing that we do is going to move the needle unless it can be, again, done systemically. So human civilization produces about 60 gigatons worth of CO2 and CO2 equivalents into the atmosphere every year. A gigaton is about 400,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools, and we produce 60 of them. Earth, the oceans can absorb 18 of that, so that leaves about a 42 gigaton discrepancy between, what and by the way, the ocean should not be absorbing that much CO2. Eventually it'll be, belching that back out and creating all kinds of problems. But let's assume that day is far from now. So the discrepancy is 42 gigatons. So our goal is to be, the Blackstone of the low carbon economy, meaning managing trillions of dollars of low carbon assets and deploying trillions of dollars annually into low carbon infrastructure that allows for human civilization, whether ideologically aligned, not ideologically aligned, consider themselves good, bifurcate, the do-goodness with their philanthropy and all of that stuff. Like, I don't want to get involved in any of it. I just want people to, when they turn on the light or they turn on the faucet or they throw something away, that becomes carbon neutral, regardless of whether they're a responsible citizen or irresponsible citizen, because most people don't have the privilege of sitting here and having these types of considerations. They're trying to make ends meet, and we don't want to put them under that burden. So my goal for Full Cycle is, in my lifetime, to meet that 42 gigaton discrepancy such that the world becomes carbon neutral and we don't have to go through massive extinction, lots of suffering, geopolitical instability due to climate refugees, and all of the suffering that comes from, now 200 years of not reconciling the carbon math. And the only way we're going to do that is by creating superior economics in our funds, so we can attract enough institutional capital that we can deploy at that level. Because this is not going to be solved with, small, well-intentioned, high net worth individuals who are trying to do the right thing. We're so grateful to those people that gave us the start, but eventually this has to transition to the much, much bigger pools of capital.
I really couldn't agree more with that. One thing that you mentioned there is this element of convenience, which I think is so important, especially coming from a place of privilege, but also for mass adaptation. Matt, I know that your family has really been focused on that as well. It almost as if you are looking for seamless solutions that people may not even see, but are really driving these major industries on the back end. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you see there?
Yeah, so I think as we look at different solutions in the businesses that we're involved with, we want to make those end products that we're creating accessible to everyone. And I think it touches on the point. This isn't a solution, or the problem can't be solved by the very elite deciding that they're going to do something, right? This has to be solutions that can be provided to everyone. And so as we look at those solutions, we want to make it, frankly, an economic decision first, with sustainability coming along for the ride. So for instance, as we look at food waste and converting it to animal feed, we're turning around and making a retail priced chicken that's equal to, slightly above conventional, but significantly below organic. And so if somebody's walking into the supermarket, they can look at the two different chickens, let's say, or chicken breast, and if they're equal pricing, but one is, coming with some carbon footprint savings, and the other one is coming with a carbon footprint in a positive direction, or negative, depending upon how you look at it, but excess carbon, then they would choose the carbon neutral or the carbon negative solution if it's economic for everyone, right? And so we're trying to find those solutions, whether it's taking the waste product out of the stream that therefore then does not create carbon dioxide. That's one benefit, but we don't want to make a product that no one can have, right? That doesn't drive, at the end of the day, it's demand, supply and demand economics. And so we want to create solutions that are affordable to everyone. And that then drives further demand for those products, which then drives additional facilities for us to go create and, save more food from going into a landfill, or more cardboard going into a landfill, or more concrete going into a landfill. So they all kind of play on each other, but it's basically driving to that economic decision first, and then the sustainability second, so that everyone can afford those solutions.
That's really well said, and I think that's such an important goal, to have both of those things at the same time, and solving for the economics as well as solving the problem. In the food waste pyramid, there's one by the Environmental Protection Agency. I believe there's one as part of the SDGs in the United Nations. They talk about how if you reuse food for other food, that's really the first priority. Certainly if you can recover any additional food from ag land, I believe that's actually the first. Second, if you can reuse food for other food, for example, up-purposing the minerals and the vitamins and all the nutrients that the plants have created to keep as food for humans and or for animal feed, as being incredibly important. Certainly we need solutions down the entire pyramid, but can you tell us a little bit more about how your upcycling of food waste from all these supermarket partners that you've been working with is integrated and repurposed, I guess preserved and repurposed and made into high quality animal feed?
Yeah, so the pyramid that you're talking about is, the first and highest best use of the food is to feed humans, right? And so we work with the supermarket chains, and frankly, most of them already work with local communities, although they might not do it efficiently. They try to. And so we are not inserting ourselves before that solution. We are basically after that, right? So it's after any donations can be occurred to the local community. But a single processing facility is collecting from about 250 supermarkets daily. And so if you think of a local community, there's more than one supermarket in that, and they're throwing away thousands of pounds each supermarket. And so, no local food bank can handle 160 tons of product every single day, 365 days a year. And so we take it after that. But our whole thing is that we don't actually look at that material as waste. We look at it and therefore create solutions that actually keep the cold chain intact. We want to preserve all of those nutrients. And if you came to one of our processing facilities, frankly, you'd be shocked how, crystal clear the lettuce looks, and, the meat looks like it could be, hosting a massive barbecue. And that's partly by design around our solution to it, because as those materials start to decay, you lose the nutrient value, right? And, therefore you've lost all the resources that went in to create that material in the first place. So we created a logistics solution to keep that cold chain intact, bring it back to a central processing facility. And then our solution in a matter of hours can turn that material into a finished, stable feed product that then can go out the back door and go into any feed mill or any pet feed in a seamless manufacturing process. So we've tried to, create a solution that captures those nutrients and therefore then puts them back into the agricultural sector. Our goal would be, or our goal would always to be to never have that, be a problem, right? Like if ultimately we went out of business because there was no food waste, I think the world would be better, and hopefully I'd find something else to do, I guess. But the likelihood, I guess, if we look at these issues, that is a massive undertaking. If you think of it unto itself, I mean, the supermarkets themselves is somewhere between 7 to 8 million tons annually, right? That's a 50 facility build out for us, and that's a $5 billion construction opportunity for us, right? So, and that's only touching maybe 10%, 12% of the total food waste in the country. And that's just the US, right? And so if you think about those issues, there needs to be 1,000 solutions to this, both pre-consumer, post-consumer. But That's kind of how we look at it. We don't want that material ever to go to waste, and we want to fit seamlessly into the existing manufacturing practices, because to convince a large animal grower to change over their infrastructure versus try to fit your solution seamlessly into their infrastructure, we've found the latter to be much more available, let's say, to new thoughts.
That's really great. And I'm just going to throw out a thought as I was listening to you and earlier to Komal. If it seems like there might be an opportunity for KDC Ag and Komal's company Copia to work together with the combination of logistics platforms from both redistributing to humans in need and then your redistribution to animal feed.
Yeah.
Komal, I know that one of the more difficult challenges you faced in creating the whole supply chain is making sure that the food was delivered incredibly quickly, so as not to be compromised, as well as that there was a lack of refrigeration and storage options. How is that something that, how did you overcome that in your business model?
Yeah, so I mean, when we first started off too, it was like we were hiring, retaining, emotionally supporting, ensuring our own drivers, which is a very costly process, one that I do not recommend for any early stage startup. And the thinking was, why are we trying to build Uber while we build Copia? Why not piggyback off of this pre-existing logistics infrastructure that exists not only all over the country, but in fact, all over the world? And so that's what we've done. We've partnered with two of the largest food logistics companies in North America, which are DoorDash and Postmates. And by partnering with them, this has enabled us to tap into 500,000 drivers across 5,000 cities. And so that's how Copia has become geographically agnostic. We operate in over 270 cities, and hundreds of locations. And so really like that is, so that's one part, really the logistics part. How do we track the safety and security of the food? So when a customer requests to pick up their excess food, they're telling us the amount and type of food that they have, and then they put it into a Copia bag. And this Copia bag is a recyclable, reusable bag. It also has a QR code embedded on it. And so once they're done, filling up that bag, they will scan in that QR code. That QR code is then registered, and that's what hits, again, our matching platform. And that's, we will know what kind of food we have, when does it need to be picked up by, what's the total tax deduction opportunity, how much does this food cost, like all of the details. And we need to have that kind of granular data to be able to effectively match it to nonprofits that are in need. So, when a driver comes and picks up that food, they'll scan in that QR code so we know that the inventory is with them. And then when they scan it, when they go to the nonprofit, they scan it out. And so, it's a full chain of custody throughout the process. And our average delivery time, as I mentioned before, is on average 26 minutes door to door. So that's at least from a freshness perspective. Then we cannot pick up food if we don't know where to take it. So there has to be an end location. And so what we've done also is we've really built out the nonprofit recipient demand signaling platform. So we have over 1,000 nonprofits, and it's actually, we've doubled in the last 3 months. So it's been insane. And these nonprofits are telling us, this is who we are, this is what we're looking for, kind of like dating profiles, except they don't lie to us about how many times they go to the gym. They'll say we want prepared, packaged, ready to go food. We want uncooked meat, uncooked produce. We want low sodium food. We are in San Francisco, so we're super fancy and we want gluten-free vegan food. Of course you do. They'll say this is what our refrigeration capacity is. This is what our freezer capacity is. These are the best points of contact. These are the types of clients we're serving. And this information can then be updated in real time. And that's what's leveraged. And now what we've created through Copia Connect is a way for nonprofits to to tell us in real time, hey, you know what, you can skip us, we've had enough food. Or hey, like our delivery didn't come, or what we were relying on didn't come, so we need to be prioritized in your system. And this way, this real-time demand signaling ensures that food waste doesn't occur anywhere on the supply chain from our perspective.
And it sounds like you're really building out the data platform as well quite quickly, both in terms of what is being wasted to categorize it in the platform, as well as what's being demanded, probably. So that's really neat as well. Brahim, I know that you're also looking at a number of other really exciting companies and I wanted to give you an opportunity to see if there's anything juicy that you can share with us. You're on mute, I think.
I said, I'll tell you one that's completely not juicy and completely disgusting. It's anaerobic digestion. This is basically what, like all biomass, like if you throw a bunch of single source waste or any sort of agricultural waste in a field, eventually it'll break down into methane and leachate, which is a toxic sludge that goes into the groundwater. There's no reason to do that. There's super old, uninteresting, uninspiring technology that just collects all of that methane, allows it to be used for energy, and also collects all of the leftover biomass as organic fertilizer. So, Europe, for example, has something like 7,000 digesters. The US has 260. It's just an area that we haven't thought about, and it requires no specific technology. It's only off-the-shelf technology. But you need teams that know how to keep the bugs alive. Like our farmers are really good at killing the bugs, and in order to make anaerobic digestion, the economics work, you need to keep the bugs alive, and it can't be a mixed source waste, because if somebody throws some Clorox into the mix, that will kill all the bugs, which is the catalyst to breaking down the the food or the hog waste or whatever it is into methane. So that's an area that we are seeking the right kind of technology for, because we want all the agricultural industry in the US to have an anaerobic digestion component to them. So that is not sitting, like hog and cow and chicken waste is not sitting in open pits, just evaporating into methane. And that's, again, another resource that we should be using. Another technology that we're looking at is lithium-ion battery recycling. Another one is instead of vertical farming, horizontal farming. It's the way this company has solved a lot of the food problems in the world is by lowering food production dramatically through this, patented horizontal farming technology that works basically anywhere. So again, part of the reasons why you have these predictions of mass climate migration is because people will stop being able to grow food because the subtropics are going to be virtually uninhabitable, and the water cycle around the world is going to be changing from, areas are going to be flooding and other areas are going to be having permanent droughts. So these kind of container technologies are 100% hermetically sealed until it's time to harvest. 99% of the water is recycled, no fertilizers, no pesticides, herbicides, rodenticides, any of that stuff that breaks down into nitrous oxide. And it does it at economics that compete with the cheapest greenhouse in the world. So it's again, all about, being in this exciting moment in time where the economics create systemic solutions instead of, I don't know what I called it earlier, vanity projects, which we're very interested in. So sorry, it's not, sexy, it's super basic, but, we actually have a foundational issue, right? Like as a civilization, we tipped the balance of our ability to survive by creating our civilization without ever balancing the chemical, factoring in the chemical balance on this closed sphere in the middle of space. So while there's a lot of very cool stuff out there that's, I don't know, pop brownie delivery drone companies and, and a super technology that lets your microwave talk to your dog collar or whatever, like that's all fantastic. And we actually need to take one step back and, and stabilize, foundationalize, I'm going to make up a word here, that, foundationalize our civilization, and then have at it. Whatever you want to create a virtual world, do it. But like, we first need to make sure that the life support system on planet Earth continues to maintain us and all the other creatures, which is where we need to be thinking. Unfortunately, like, I'm not like Dr. Doom here. I'm just talking about, it's like it's 12,000 years of stabilized climate that allowed us to build the civilization that we're in right now, that is now destabilizing the climate as we enter the Anthropocene. So because we we have the money, we have the technology, we can solve, and we obviously have the ingenuity. We have great examples on this call, and the passion and the goodwill. We just need to maybe take a quick step back, stabilize everything, and then build whatever we want at it. Click the button, deliver the pot brownie.
I think I agree that we take a step back and we make sure that we continue to be able to have all of these technologies available to us as a civilization, and to be able to enjoy those, and also to do so with the respect of taking care of all the creatures and habitats in the world. I think that's well said. And in terms of the lithium ion battery strategy, I think that's, upcycling, recycling those, or recreating them without the precious metal or mining elements is going to be a big area of disruption as well. We've seen a number of amazing technologies come through our offices too. So before I open it up to questions for the audience, actually we'll do that just very quickly. If any of you would be able to share a little bit about your actual business, and how you're doing in terms of the revenues or your profit margins. I think that there's a number of venture capitalists as well as second-time founders and people with that are looking to place their assets into opportunities for the future that are both responsible and profitable. Can you give us any inkling of the returns your companies are pulling in right now? Or is that too sensitive of a question? Certainly don't answer if you're not comfortable.
I'll definitely answer, but I think one of my colleagues should go first. I feel like I've been dominating a little bit, so.
Yeah, sure. So we have grown 3x. We added an additional 180 locations. This powered by Copia, this technical infrastructure, is a new revenue model for us. So usually our pre-COVID model was to be charging, like, the subscription. It was a subscription for food recovery, food redistribution services, right? So anywhere from $500 to $2,200 a month based on the number of pickups. This year, what we've layered on is now waste tracking and data analytics, like software. So for businesses to really understand what is being wasted and why. And then now we have this API, this technical infrastructure that is now being used for disaster response. And what's great about that, it is just technology. So it's not that we're actually managing logistics, whereas pre-COVID, we are managing logistics. And so for that, we're getting paid a licensing fee and a per meal cost. One of the things I was going to add is what's really changing too is you see the carrots and you see the sticks. So as an example, California we helped pass what is called SB 1383. And it's essentially mandating that every large business, institution, waste hauler, city, jurisdiction, they are now legally required to have a food waste management solution. And they must meet both reporting and waste reduction requirements. And so CalRecycle is the governing body for the state of California. And so CalRecycle selected Copia as the premier solution for food waste prevention and food donation for California. So you see that there's more regulatory momentum driving demand. In addition, the PATH Act, which was passed in 2015, it essentially allows businesses to write off up to 30% of their annual operating income in food donation in exchange for tax deductions. And it essentially, right now, currently over $40 billion of tax savings go unclaimed by businesses every year for food donations, which is insane. So a way to both you have the carrots and you have the sticks, and we're leveraging both. And the fact that even during a global pandemic, we've been able to re-engineer our platform speaks volumes of just what the overall potential is.
So rapid revenue growth and the number of verticals and income streams that you have increasing sounds like the main kind of takeaways there, along with all of the different support that you're getting from regulations. That's great.
So I guess I can't really talk about the economics per se, but kind of how we structure deals. Our kind of background is in traditional project financing. So as we look to build these assets, we are looking at long-term supply contracts, long-term offtake contracts to solidify and go into, the massive debt placement market. And so, typically somewhere between 150 to 250 million dollars are different projects depending upon which platform they are. So those are, again, kind of the traditional project financing economics with 2 to 3x debt coverage ratios, and we take on all of the development, engineering, construction, and operations. So that's kind of our team and our platform. We've evolved from, we did power plants in the 80s and 90s to the largest telecom privately held company in the nation, to deploying solar assets in New Jersey, and now kind of doing that similar model as it relates to both ag, cardboard, and ultimately, hopefully, concrete.
Humbly, incredibly successful, it sounds like.
Right.
It's really exciting.
We're trying to be, I guess. Long way to go.
So, so for us, we're the way our economics work is, like I said, we only pick market-ready technology. Our job is to take that technology across what's called the valley of death, which is where the technology is proven and the company needs somebody to finance their first commercial plant. And that's where it's a different kind of investor. So they spend a lot of time looking for that investor, and many times the company doesn't make it through that valley because they end up, not being able to operate while that, that investment horizon gets met. So we bridge that for the companies, and for that we get an exclusive right to fund future projects to make up for the commercial risk we took in the initial project. So we have an interesting hybrid where we invest in the equity of the company, allows them to open more offices around the world so they can bid on RFPs in different jurisdictions. But over time, primarily the fund ends up made up of 85% physical assets with long-term offtake agreements. So it's kind of like this hybrid infrastructure growth equity fund that ends up producing a very nice risk-adjusted return, some north of 20. If we ever can monetize carbon, that'll jump to north of 30% IRR, but not without anybody having to take any sort of undue risk on technologies or lumpy venture returns or anything like that. It's consistent returns primarily from, like I said, infrastructure projects with offtake agreements. We don't take on any technology on our platform unless it produces a minimum of a 14% IRR at the project level, which, with these things usually have offtake agreements in the decade, sometimes 20, 30 years of predetermined, contractual offtake agreements. We don't hold on to those assets long term. We build them, commission them, and then sell them off for the discounted cash value, and then recycle that capital and pay distributions to our LPs. That's how our economics work.
That's fantastic. So it's much later stage, de-risked, very good returns, more infrastructure, credit equity hybrids, it sounds like. That's really great. Thank you, Brahim. I'm going to turn it back over, unless anyone would like to say anything else, I'm going to turn it back over to Simran, who has the questions. For some reason, I'm not able to see the private questions here. So, and I know that there's quite a number of them.
Yeah, we have a few questions, but we're also, just going over time right now. Is everyone okay on time? Are you okay going over about 5 or 10 minutes? Yeah. All right. Great. So this is actually for Komal. how much excess food do you have to pass up, and how often do you see inedible food? And I guess it's also for Matt.
Do you mind repeating that question just so I'm gonna make sure I understood it?
How much excess food do you have to pass up, and how often do you see inedible food?
We don't see inedible food. We do training for our customers. So they have to, I mean, there is, so within the platform, you can do two things, right? You can request pickups of your excess food, and you can track inedible excess food, so your organic waste. So this is still giving you a benchmark as to, I mean, whether or not you feed hungry people with it, it's still food waste. It's wasted money, it's wasted resources, it's wasted all of that. So we don't, they are able to track it without donating it, because they know that this is going for human consumption. And the idea is, like, if you wouldn't feed it to your family, like, don't give it to us, right? Some simple, and you said how much excess food.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things also that's interesting is that we waste 3 times more food than there are mouths to feed. So when I say hunger is the world's dumbest problem, it's not because hunger sucks. It's because we have more than enough resources to feed every single person on the planet 3 times over. And so there has to be a recipient for that food. So we don't pass up on food. There is never any excess. We have a 95% customer retention rate.
Okay, so but also, like, most of the waste that you're seeing is due to over ordering. So it's not necessarily supply chain issues that are going on.
Right. It's highly, 85% of the food that flows through our platform is highly perishable prepared food. So it's food that's ready to go, ready to eat. It's not the stuff that food banks have or food pantries have. It's really high quality, pretty bougie food.
And you're based in how many markets now? Because I think, like, yesterday we were talking, you're only in California for now, right?
No, we're in 270 cities. We operate in 48 states, I want to say, so, and in Canada.
That's great. Okay, well, we only have time, in the interest of time, you know, I know everybody has places to go, and also some attendees are leaving. Do you guys want to do one more question, or should we say our goodbyes? Like, this is recorded. I will send this over to you over YouTube and Facebook and everything. You can share it. You can also keep it for yourselves for your own content. But I want to give a massive thank you to all of you, Komal, Ibrahim, Matt, and Kim. Thank you as always for helping me with these together. And yeah, have a
Thank you for having us.
yeah,
Thank you very much.
Great much today, and you guys are doing some incredible work right now, and you know, I'm excited I can, like, go in and, like, learn more about what else is happening. All right, guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.